Father God, Earth Mother, Holy Spirit, eternal light. By whatever name we know our source of strength, we call on that strength now. In these pandemic days, may we who are merely inconvenienced remember those whose lives are at stake. May we who are without known risk factors remember those more vulnerable. May we who are privileged to be retired or working from home remember those who choose between risking their health and not making the rent. May we remember that each of us is a divine soul, navigating challenges seen and unseen. And each of us needs love and understanding. Remembering all this, may we be kind to ourselves and to one another. May it be so. Amen. And let's begin.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to move down to agenda item 3, recognition of public presentations. On the agenda, we have a presentation of a proclamation for International Firefighters Day. I will read the proclamation as follows. A proclamation by the mayor and city of Statesboro, Georgia. International Firefighters Day proclamation, May 4th, 2020. Whereas International Firefighters Day was established in 1999 to remember those firefighters worldwide lost in the line of duty protecting the safety of us all. And whereas the role of a firefighter in today's society, be it urban, rural, natural environment, volunteer, career, industrial, defense force, aviation, motorsport, or other, is one of dedication, commitment, and sacrifice, no matter what country they reside and work in. And whereas International Firefighters Day recognizes those firefighters who have served their communities for most of their lives, and those who have served for just a few short years, they set themselves apart as model citizens, setting a fine example in their communities with their willingness and dedication. And whereas, hailing from all walks of life, they are our mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandparents, neighbors, and friends. They protect us without wanting of recognition or reward. In our time of need, they are there with courage, compassion, and loyalty. They are the essence of the true meaning of community. Therefore, I, Jonathan McCullough, Honorable Mayor of the City of Statesboro, Georgia, do hereby proclaim May 4th, 2020 as Firefighters Day in the City of Statesboro, and therefore extend appreciation to the members of the Statesboro Fire Department for their dedicated work and efforts to protect life and property within our community, and encourage all citizens to recognize not only our local firefighters, but those worldwide, year-round, for their courage, selfless service, and sacrifice. In witness thereof, I hereunto set my hand and affix the seal of the City of Statesboro on this 5th day of May 2020. Thank you, Chief. Thank you. And Chief, we're going to set this to the side. We're going to recognize social distance. Yes, sir. But we do want to get a photo with you. We'll move down to agenda item 4. Are there any public comments?
There is one from Sam Jones who would like to speak in regards to agenda item 12.
Okay. Mr. Jones, you'll come forward with it?
Certainly. Morning, Mayor, council members, I am Sam Jones. In my reference to the agenda of item number 12, I know the city at this point is considering having a study by the Blakely Advisory Group. I think it's a great idea. However, I think it's been a study done in the past that shows that right now about 80% of the citizens of Statesboro are renters. So I'm thinking 80% of the citizens are renters. There's a need for single family homes. My suggestion to the mayor and council members that they take this money, maybe add something to it, like $100,000 or something, as the state is doing, as a system of down payment. Right now the state offers 3% down payment. Maybe the city can offer a match, 3% down payment to help our citizens become homeowners. I also read in the paper recently that we just approved a development of 150 rentals, single family rentals. That's great. However, my folks who I talk to daily, they've been renting most of their life. Now they want to become homeowners. So they like for the city to maybe get a little creative and help them become homeowners. So if you consider, instead of paying Mr. Blakely to tell us that we need some homes, let's take this money and set it aside and help the homeowners. Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll move down to agenda item 5, is consideration of a motion to approve the consent agenda. Line item A, approval of minutes for the council meeting on April 7th, executive sessions for February the 4th, March the 3rd, March 17th, and April 7th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. We'll move down to agenda item 6, which is consideration of a motion to approve the Statesville Police Department towing rotation and record agreement. Mr. Payne.
Mayor, members of council, annually you approve this record policy. The police department is recommending about 3 changes, and the chief is here and he can help me if I get it wrong. We've had some complaints, and so what we want to do is recognize that in some cases we've had records that have been called, and instead of the records showing up, somebody else will show up for them, and they're not fulfilling their responsibility. So what this change says is that the record that's called is the record that has to show up, and the vehicle that shows up has to bear the name of the record company that was called. The other thing is, it also talks about what will happen if we call and no one answers. Then the police department dispatch will move down to the next record on the list. And if we have a continuous problem, then we will refer that company to the command bureau, who will then have maybe a conversation and then a recommendation to the chief as to whether that company ought to remain on the record rotation list. And then the last change, and then the last change is simply the complaint procedure that would be used should we have to deal with one of our record companies. And these are the 3 changes that are notified the police department. We do recommend that the policy be approved by the city council.
Any discussion by the council?
Mr. Finney, have this record agreement, Ken may know, but we've gone back 10 years. It's been contentious at times, and so I'm just curious: did we reach out to the towing companies and kind of inform them that these decisions are going to be changed? Because every time we change this thing and don't kind of inform the businesses and just change it, then there's a backlash, and I'd really like to not go through all that.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This just stemmed from complaints from the record companies themselves.
Yeah.
We've had individual conversations. We've had a group contact with them to say we're proposing, but there's constant contact with us and the record companies, so they know.
Okay.
Any further questions by council? Seeing that there's none, is there a motion to approve?
So, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll move down to agenda item 7, consideration of a motion to direct the city attorney to draft ordinance revision of city ordinance 6-7I as it pertains to prohibition of alcohol licenses for public employees and officials. Okay.
Mayor and Council, as City Ordinance 6-7I currently reads, interests of public employees and officials prohibited. And this is chapter 6, alcohol ordinance. No license shall be granted to any city, state, or federal employee or official whose duties include the regulation or policing of alcoholic beverages or licenses or any tax collecting activity. So this is brought forward pursuant to City Ordinance 224, which is the presentation ordinance, which requires an affirmative vote of mayor and council to direct city attorney to draft the first reading of any proposed amendment to the code of ordinances.
Okay. Any discussion by council? All right, seeing that there's
we were going to say on ordinance revision, nobody has recommended a revision. What's the revision?
The revision is for us to allow public officials, employees, and so forth to be able to obtain an alcohol license.
So it would be removal of this subsection.
Yeah.
Is that what is being proposed today?
Yes.
Which would bring us in compliance with state regulations rather than being more restrictive, is that right, Kenny?
That's correct.
Okay, I was just curious about, and I emailed Kane and got a little bit of information. I can see a potential for some conflict of interest with us voting on applications and such. So what is the process other places?
Well, we have in our ethics code that's currently section 2-125, which is a city official may not participate in a vote or decision on a matter affecting a person, entity, or property in which the official has a substantial interest. In addition, city officials who serve as corporate officers or members of the board of directors of a nonprofit entity must disclose their interest in said entity prior to participating in a vote or decision regarding funding by or through the city of the entity. Where the interest of the city official in the subject matter of a vote or decision is remote or incidental, the city official may participate in the vote or decision and not need to disclose the interest. Reading on that is that if the city official may not participate in a vote that actually affects whether or not they get a license or in what capacity any appeals would come from to council from the administrative judge hearings. I know Councilman Boylan has had experience with recusing himself in the past. We've seen it done on numerous measures when a city official is directly impacted by a proposal, recusing him or herself from that vote and disclosing why the recusal is being performed.
And this kind of goes into that conversation, and I'm actually going to put this on the work session for this month's work session. Alcohol can be something that is, for the large part, can be done administratively. And I think that it's better done administratively because my concern is that the livelihood of a business or entrepreneur should not become a political process. And so what I want to prevent are those phone calls to elected officials saying, hey, look, my license is coming up on the council. Can you help us out? Let's remove that entirely and make alcohol licensing, that entire process, an administrative function instead of bringing it before council. I think that removes the politics out of it. I think it makes it a pure process where the licensing is based on merit and not political interest. So that's what the thought process is for our work session for this upcoming work session for this month.
We can certainly talk about it more in work session, but I was under the impression that the reason these things are coming to council is because there was a judge, I can't remember, 4 or 5 years ago, said, hey, look, if you guys are going to be fining these folks, you have to be approving licenses as well. So this was back when, who was your predecessor? Alvin, sorry. When Alvin was here, that was something that he had to deal with, and this is all stemming from the Gatto thing. So there's a reason it's up here. It's not up here for any political reason. It's up here for a legal reason.
Yeah, okay. So let's check into that and see if this can be done administratively. Was this a suggestion by him, or was this an order by the judge?
Correct.
It was an
Yes,
order
because
by
what happened was it was being done administratively, and there was something about if we're approving or fining them, then we have to approve it. So it's like and I don't know the legal stuff, so I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I do know that the reason it comes before us is because that's what the judge required us to do as part of the process.
So I want to understand this clearly. The judge said that everything alcohol has to come.
No, the approval of the license.
The approval of the license.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Because we then also fine them and put them through an administrative process. That the approval
Now,
has come through.
is this just for us, or other communities do this as well?
I'm not familiar with any letter about this. I do know that the process for violation hearings has changed since then. We now have an administrative judge with appellate rights going to the council, but not, and we're not imposing fines. It's now, administrative fees and so there is a bit of a change in how the disciplinary proceedings have occurred since then. And I'd have to find and review whatever letter Councilman Boyd or ruling Councilman Boyd is discussing.
And Kate, part of the reason we did what you're just discussing, the administrative judge, was to separate that so that way because we were both the judge and then we were the appellate. So, I mean, you appeal to the same person who just judged. So by taking the judge out and letting the judge make a determination based off the ordinances and then us being at an appellate level, that separated those two functions.
That's right. And I was present for that change, but not for what time.
All right, so let's get clarity on it and let's review that for the work session.
Okay.
For the work session, and what we can take away from this body, let's do that. That's what the goal should be.
Okay, so that's an issue we need to be clear about and be sure we're doing it right.
Yeah.
But that's a separate future decision. The decision today is from us to whether or not we're gonna ask him to revise the ordinance to make it in compliance with the state.
Yeah.
So my question still is the conflict of interest, how that would be dealt with. If there were, if I decided to open something on the side and get an alcohol license, would that then mean that anything about alcohol that came up, I would need to recuse myself? Is that your understanding?
If you have a license, that would be correct.
Because it would have a direct bearing on a
If
personal
you have to
interest.
recuse yourself from it. So if you open up a clubhouse, then you have to recuse yourself from it.
Yeah, not just the vote for your license, you accuse yourself, but then all future votes on the alcohol license.
Yeah,
That's
that
correct.
was my question.
Which is
Yeah.
what you've done in the past, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I worked at a hotel that had a fridge, a tiny little refrigerator full of beer. Hardly like a bar or anything like that. I had to recuse myself because of that tiny little, we had like 12 bags. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And one thing that we want to be clear about this is that the way that the law is written now for the city of Statesboro, you can't hold any elected office. If you live in the county, and we'll use Al Chapman, and I hope Al is not looking. But if Al wanted to run to be a county commissioner, but his license is held by the city of Statesboro, he can't run to be a county commissioner. He can't run to be a state representative. He can't run for the U.S. Congress. He can't run to be a state senator. He can't run. And in my opinion, I think that the law was written to prevent some bad things that happened in the past, but I think it was written and the result was a draconian law that's preventing individuals to participate in the democratic process. And so that's really what my concern is. And so what I would like to see happen is for us to be able to pull this back to the state level and allow individuals that serve in these capacities to be able to run for any office that they should be able to do so. And that's what the thought process is. So if you own a corner store, a restaurant, if you own the clubhouse, you're not allowed to run for any office. And that's a problem. And so I think that for this situation, state law is sufficient enough to make sure that we are taken care of. And I think that we've already put other things in place to kind of protect different assets throughout the community. That's what the thought process But it should be understood that by this group of people, that we would have to recuse ourselves if anybody so chooses, and this is moving forward. And that's just to maintain the purity of the process.
Just want to acknowledge that Councilmember Riggs is on the meeting.
I see him with his red shirt on.
I don't know if he wants
Yeah,
to
I
say
see it. Councilmember Riggs, do you want to add something to the conversation? Is he frozen?
He does look frozen.
Yeah.
I think that's just,
So really deep
that's just the
thought.
background picture.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? He snapped the picture, posted it, and went to do something else.
He froze the picture with it.
Meanwhile, he's in the back.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Councilmember Riggs, do you want to add something to the conversation?
I don't think he has
Councilmember Riggs,
his.
you think you're muted.
Unmute.
He's dropping some real knowledge on us. Councilmember Riggs, we think
It
you're
looks
muted.
like his audio is not connected.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Councilmember Reeves, we're gonna move forward if that's okay with you. Just shake your head, yes or no. Yeah, he's still talking. Yeah. Okay, we're having some technical difficulties with Councilmember Riggs. So we're gonna move forward. Is there a motion to have the city attorney draw up our ordinance that reflects the state ordinance for the city of Statesboro?
And I just want to be clear, you're requesting that we remove that entire 6-7-I.
Yeah, we wanna pull it back to what state. Okay, do we have a motion?
So,
Is there a second?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. All those opposed?
Nay.
We'll move down to agenda item 8, consideration of a motion to direct the city attorney to draft ordinance revision of the city of Statesboro ordinance 6-17D as it pertains to exemptions to open container prohibition. Okay.
Mayor and Council, this is the same procedural status that was in the prior agenda item. It's a vote on a motion to direct me to do a first reading of an amended version of 6-17D, which is the open container exemptions that are allowed in the city states. For the way it stands now is that applications for open container exemptions can be brought through the clerk and then brought before mayor and council for approval. What's being proposed today is the establishment of a downtown open container exemption zone, thinking rough boundaries being Mulberry, Cherry, College, and Hill. But of course, that would be by council decision what the actual zone would look like. And what I would want drafted as is something that looks very similar to what Savannah has as to what is allowed in transit out in public areas, regulating what sort of vessel it's in, the size of it, and the number of vessels that can be carried per of each person. So that's brought forward today. It's about establishing an exemption zone for open containers within the downtown zone, and with time frame to be determined by y'all as well. When would this apply? What days, what hours, and what would be the geographical parameters? Consult with TV and fire, find out which ones public safety would be most in favor of, and move forward from there. But for now, we could discuss whether we move forward at all.
Any discussion by council?
Mr. Mayor, before we go forward, just a point of clarity. Are all three of these decisions ones that we have to have an affirmative vote of a majority of council people? All three of these today?
Yes.
Okay, and so there were three of us voting yay on the first one and one nay, so whatever John voted, it wouldn't make a difference. But we need to pay attention and be sure we're getting his vote, because it could make a difference, right? That time, whether he said yes or no, there was still a majority of yay. Am I right? Okay, so we just need to be sure that John is saying yes or no as we take these votes.
And you, John, if you will, his audio is working now.
Oh, you can
good to go now? Okay.
unmute him.
Can you hear us, John?
Yeah, he's delayed a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay. Did he freeze again?
I don't think.
Okay, no, he did. Ceiling fans moving in the background. Okay. All right, any discussion by council? Okay. All right, and so what we're asking is that we want to draft, a resolution that allow, a draft ordinance that will allow us to see the geographical area for a city center area, downtown Statesboro, far as an open container. Okay, and that would be pursuant to Georgia law, except for the difference between ours would be the fact that we would identify a specific area, correct?
Georgia law does not cover open containers outside of vehicles. We would not be, this would only be for pedestrian purposes. So any prohibition of open containers outside of motor vehicles is left to local jurisdiction. And as it stands now, is we do have an open container prohibition in the city of Statesboro, except for those times when an entity is applied for an open container exemption, which comes before y'all for approval.
Okay. Any discussion by council?
The only thing I would say is any non-DSDA special event that was held downtown, they would have to have some kind of an insurance as well. I don't think it would be a good idea necessarily if you're having a special event that you don't have insurance for all the people that will be downtown. So I don't know if that's covered under the next one, but other than that, I mean, it's a fine idea. I mean, I hope the DSDA gets to where we're at now, so I think this is just one more step from there. But you see what I'm getting at? If somebody has a big event, big event downtown, you gotta make sure, unless it's a DSDA event, we gotta make sure that the thing is licensed and all that kind of stuff. Well, don't want to restrict it, just want to make sure if somebody gets hurt, we're covered in the city now. Yeah, that's right.
And that's something we can talk about at the work session as well.
Yeah, I mean, right now, we require, anyone with an alcohol license to have, that liquor liability insurance. So for this right here, that only makes sense to do that, so yeah. Because that protects the city. That's one thing that we want to make sure with that. Okay. But with that being said, is there a motion to draft, to instruct the city attorney to draft a ordinance for first reading that reflects permission of an open container in the city center for said city center to be identified via a geographical area that will be presented to council for first reading?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. And John, is that aye? Okay, thank you, John. All right, let it show that agenda item 8 has passed. All right, we move down to agenda item 9, which is consideration of a motion to direct the city attorney to draft an ordinance provision of city ordinance 6-8 as it pertains to temporary special event permits. Kane, if you will.
Mayor and Council, 6.8D3 covers the special temporary special event permit. And this is, I'll just read the ordinance as it stands now. In A, it sets out the qualifications for it. This code section is similar to what other jurisdictions that do have this ability to permit have on their books, but it reads, temporary permits sell alcoholic beverages may be issued to any licensee holding a valid city-issued catered event alcoholic beverage license for a period not to exceed 3 days for an approved special event. The licensed caterer must make complete application and pay all required application fees to the city clerk or his or her designee at least 45 days prior to the start date of the proposed event, shall be required to comply with all the general ordinances and regulations for on-premises consumption. The applicant seeking a temporary license must also obtain a state-issued temporary special event permit. I will state that we are one of the few jurisdictions that allow this period, and in order to have this temporary special event be allowed by the state, there has to be local licensure of it. So there are not many that offer this at all. We thankfully are. When we brought this measure forward, further restriction was placed on it that it would only be available to city licensed catered event licensees. And the reason for that was that it would be, there was a higher stake in the game for these applicants. That a suspension of an alcohol license for these parties, when they had, for these licenses, when they had it, the license suspension would be meaningful and would actually be corrective in that manner, whereas it wouldn't be for for a person that does not hold a regular license. So that was the reason why. But this is an outlier. This is not seen elsewhere in the state that particular restriction is placed on it. It's typically a party or a person may apply for these, and that's what the state requires as well. It does not require the caterer, and also the state, I believe, has a 15-day lead time on the application. I would say that we need at least a 21-day lead time on applications here, just for the reason that that's the maximum amount of time that elapses between city council meetings, is that 3 weeks. So if otherwise, there's a possibility of having to do a special call meeting for these events. So if there is any sort of revision to it, I would ask for that, just for the sake of efficiency on staff side.
Okay. As a point of clarity, is this not something that could be handled at an administrative level, or is this something that would have to come before council?
Of course, that could come through at the administrative level.
Okay.
But as it's written now, it requires approval of mayor and council.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. Any discussion by council?
I'm sorry, I got lost in the details. I know you need to tell us everything, but basically, what are we proposing to change?
45 down to 10, or 12, 21, is that what you're suggesting?
It was 45. As I understood, it was 45 days, and
Yeah, it is
the
45.
state requires 10.
Right.
15.
I think the state requires 15. We've got 45, and I think we need 21 just because of our time sometimes between council meetings.
So we're reducing the amount of time from the time you have to apply till you can get the permit?
And also the question was asked,
Yeah.
who should be eligible to get these? Should it continue to be restricted to just city licensed caterers, or should the eligibility be broadened?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so what the thought process is that I think that adults should be able to, and here the issue that I'm having is that it seems like, we're 87 years beyond prohibition, and we're still fighting this prohibition. And so what my thought process is that individuals should be able to, if they're having an event, they should be able to have alcohol at that particular event. If it's not a private event, it's a public event. My thought process is kind of along the same line as the special events, that there should be an insurance that these individuals will need to get that will protect those individuals as a part of that, as well as us as a whole. So the thought process is to expand it to allow private citizens to be able to do this, but put that requirement in there, that insurance requirement in there, so that all parties are protected. That's what the thought process is. Any discussion by council?
Well, one of the other things about the reason we went with the special event permit is that anybody who serves alcohol at that special event has to be licensed. Anybody who's a bouncer has to be checked. So are we going to submit all that paperwork to the police every time somebody does a special event permit? So the police are going to have to check insurance requirements. They're going to have to check bartender requirements. They're going to have to check bouncer requirements. They're going to have to check serve safe training. All that is required to have an alcohol license. And some of that's state, some of that's here locally. That was the reason why it was decided to go through the special event permit, or the catering permit, because those catering folks have a license. They've done all the things, they've been vetted by the police, all that kind of thing. When you start just letting random folks come into town and hold parties, and I understand the insurance requirement, but it's without any other kind of check, those are the problem. Those are what caused the shootings and the stabbings back 5 and 8 years ago. So this isn't about prohibition necessarily, Mayor. It's about the people that come here and throw these parties are incredibly irresponsible when they're not local folks. Our local license holders are exceptionally good people that try to work hard and run their businesses the right way. But we have some folks, and I experienced this even when I was at the hotel, people trying to rent my facility and just outright lying about what they're trying to do. And then they come here and they bring in bad elements from other areas and they bring it to our city. So for me, I'd like to have our local alcohol license holders, they're trained, they're vetted, they're insured. Those folks can provide these services because they've been vetted. To have just random folks throw a party and then do it administratively, I think that's just a really bad idea because we've been there and it was already a bad idea.
Well, here's my concern, and I recognize, people coming from out of town, throwing parties, right? But this law prevents people that live here from being able to do that. And so, yeah, it does.
You can have a wedding or a private party. This doesn't control private parties at all. Only if you're selling tickets. Only if you're trying to sell alcohol.
Yeah,
if you want to have a wedding and have wine at your wedding, you can have that.
Yeah, I recognize that. But what I'm saying is that we have local individuals that have small businesses that's wanting to do these type of events. And so I feel that let's put that administrative piece in there. Make sure they have all of the pieces of the puzzle moving forward. Make sure that they have the event license, or the event insurance. Make sure that if we pass this, then okay. Then if you're going to be serving alcohol, then you're going to need to have security of some sort. You're going to have a licensed bartender. Let's put all of those parameters in place, but just allow private citizens to be able to choose whether or not they want to serve alcohol at their event, whether it's a ticketed event or not.
Again, Mayor, I want to be clear. If you want to have a private party, wedding, or mitzvah, whatever, you can serve alcohol at your party. Mm-hmm. This restriction, tell me if I'm wrong, King, is for folks that want to have public special events where they sell tickets and sell alcohol. Yeah. If you have a wedding and you give wine away to your folks, you can do that. But you want to have a birthday party for your 21st birthday.
The thing that you just said, I'm not talking about weddings. I'm not talking about family gatherings. I'm talking about individuals that want to have a public event, that want to be able to sell tickets for it. How do we open the door so that they're able to do so? So if it means for us to be able to pass this with them bringing on the bartender, bringing on the insurance requirement, making sure that they have everything that's in line to do so. I don't think that that's a reason to allow them to do what the state allows them to do. So that's what my concern is that, and what was interesting to me is that when I was first elected, I was the blazing liberal, right? I'm the guy that wanted, we want to put in all of these regulations, but since I've been here, I've been trying to pull back regulation so that we can open up an economy that can feed from just not the top down, but from the bottom up. And what I'm telling you is that I have firsthand knowledge that there are small micro businesses that want to get off of the ground, and this is a barrier to them being able to grow.
What businesses are not being able to grow because they can't throw a special event party?
If you're in that line of business,
what line of business?
Yeah, individuals that throw comedy shows, individuals that do special events across the board. So those are the individuals. And you may not be familiar with those, and that's absolutely fine. But we cannot allow, trying to prevent somebody from coming out of town into Statesboro to throw a party. That cannot be the reason why, that cannot be the barrier that's preventing good local people from being able to grow their business. So that is the key piece. And so what I'm saying is, let's not remove it. Let's figure out how do we do it in the safest fashion possible that protects the city, but also give the individual citizens in this community the opportunity to have the freedom to make a decision for themselves.
So I had a question for Kenny. So based upon this ordinance, we as council members get to determine or work out all of the minute stuff or things that may harm or help the city. We get to come together as a group and work those out, and then bring that back before people and council to vote on? Is that correct?
But that's basically what we're trying to do right now. It sounds to me like there's too many questions on this one that we might want to look at it in work session and then come back to the ordinance, because right now we're trying to give, my understanding is we're trying to give Kane enough details to draft the ordinance for us to start voting on it next meeting. And I don't think we're clear.
Well, next meeting would just be a first reading, so we would still be vetting it.
But we don't know what we want him to have in it now.
He writes a draft and then the public gets to comment at the next meeting.
If I may, the only thing that was presented to y'all today is subsection A of the temporary special event permit section, that sets out the eligibility and also sets out the time period for when the application has to be made. And included in there is the part that, that they have to comply with all general ordinances and regulations for on-premises consumption. But then there are 5 more subsections on this that of review, of requirements, of indemnification of the applicant, about serving, about bouncers, about how this chief or chief of police can stop it at any time. That a lot of the details are already in here. My understanding was today we were coming forward based on who was eligible for it and what the application deadline was for. Because most of the concerns y'all have brought up are already addressed in the ordinance.
And just something you touched on earlier, Kane, and just to be clear, these special event permits that we do here, very few other cities even do this. So the idea that we're not forward thinking, Mayor, I think is a little off on this one, because this is something that the fact that we even offer the special event is something that most cities don't do. You can't do what you're trying to do in 95% of the cities around the state. So we can do that here. You just have to go through somebody who's been licensed, who's been approved, who has a properly, manages that type of business, which can harm people.
Yeah, exactly. But what we've done is created a monopoly. And so that monopoly is that we have 3 businesses. So that anytime these things come up, this activity is funneled directly to those businesses. And the caveat, what draws concern to me is that we're setting a precedent where the state allows individuals to do this.
We have a special event permit. If you have a special event,
this is not about this is about an individual being able to do this. And so, and at this point right now, the other question that we have at hand right now is, can we get Kane to create an ordinance so that we can review it? And then if there's anything that we need, and if we agree on it, we agree on it. If we don't, the only thing that's up for debate now is, do we instruct Kane to go ahead, write the ordinance, and then allow us to review the ordinance? So we're not voting on passing or failing it now. We just need to get Kane to write it so we can review it. And then if we don't agree on it, if we see things that if we think it's going to be too cumbersome, then hey, look, we'll throw it out. But if not, if we can see that there's a safe way to do this, then we move forward. That's what the debate is today. So we're not going to fix it today. Today is just for Kane to get us something to take a look at so that we can be able to address this in the future. So with that being said, is there any further discussion by council? Okay.
I do have a question, and I'm sorry, y'all, but so, and I know we're just voting to see if Kane can draft it up, but is this something that we're voting on that people that live outside of the city can come and get these permits? Or is this just for locals? Because I do agree, I don't want people from Atlanta and Savannah or wherever coming and having events here and bringing drama to the city. Like, I do think that it should be just for the residents of the city. So are we voting to just for you to draft it up, and then we'll talk about all of that stuff later?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
We can figure all of that out. We can figure all of that out during the process. So, any further discussion by council? Okay. All right. Is there a motion to have Kane draft an ordinance to draft an ordinance to allow individuals to be able to obtain a what is it?
Temporary special
Yeah,
event.
temporary special event, individually. That's what this is about. All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, all those opposed?
Nay.
All right.
It
Okay.
John was an aye. John, did you say yes?
I said nay.
Okay. All right, so we have 2 yea, 2 nay, and Sherry, what was your vote?
I said yes.
All right, so we'll move forward. All right, so we'll move down to agenda item 10. Consideration of a motion to approve resolution 2020-13, a resolution approving co-application with the Downtown Development Authority for Economic Development Administration grant, a commitment of matching funds. Mr. Penn.
Mayor and members of the council, you remember back in January, I came to you asking for your approval to submit an application to the EDA for a project on right behind the Business Innovation Center, and with DSDA and with Georgia Southern University being a co-applicant with the city of Statesboro. And so for a while, things sort of slowed up with COVID, but now things have picked up, and EDA has said that our application is getting looked at.
Okay.
So in order for us to be able to proceed, we need city council's approval of a resolution that says that we can move forward. If you remember the $2 million project, or $2.5 million project. So we would be looking for $2 million from EDA. The city would have to provide $500,000 in match. And so we recommended that to you because we believe it would be a great opportunity to be able to expand the classroom, the training capacity. We've had, now with COVID, despite what we've been doing with Zoom, we still believe people are going to need to come and meet together. This social distancing is fine for some cases, but we still believe we have to press the flesh. And so we want to recommend to you that you approve to go to the next step. We've identified funding in 2013 SPLOST and 2019 in order to be able to cover the $500,000 match that would be required. The good thing is that although the match is there, it's not like all of a sudden we just have to start sending it out the door. It's as the work, if we get the application approved, which I think we're pretty positive about, if the application gets approved, there's a gradual spin. So we still, it's not like it just starts running out the door. So we do recommend that you approve the next step for the application for the EDA grant with the SDA, City of Statesboro, and Georgia Southern University.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dean. Any discussion on behalf of the council?
This is basically the expansion of classrooms and such, like over past Big and that big empty building.
Yeah, there's a big building in the back that has a couple of different levels. Right now, there's like a woodworking shop at one end of it, but there's a big open space that could be converted to a training, more of a training facility. And then there's a second level that can also be expanded. And I also want to put a plug in for the city of Statesboro. We do not have adequate training space for our people. And so this would be important for our folks because we need to be doing more training for our folks. And this would be a great help to us as well.
The SDA owns that property.
They do.
Okay.
Have you been in that building?
I have not, I need a tour.
It's at the old grocery store section, I think it's called car dealership.
Not Ponderosa, the building.
The Ponderosa.
Ponderosa.
This is the Ponderosa, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so the idea is to turn it into about a 280 person conference center that can be divided up, kind of like when you go to the GMA, you get the breakout rooms and things like that. And then the one with the big garage doors would be turned into Fab Lab space as well as some additional business incubator space for the small businesses that are down there.
And what kind of timeline do we anticipate?
2 years.
No, again, thank you to the city, thank you to the SDA for that process.
when we're thinking just the timeline, I anticipate that we're at the point that we have a further consideration letter.
Come to the mic, you can state your name.
Great, thank you. Dominic Hallaby with Georgia 7. Just from a timing perspective, since we received the further consideration letter, what we're actually doing is checking boxes for EDA, making sure that we've made it through the competitive round. Now we just need to make sure his contract agreements and award, should an award be given, it's appropriately, EDA does their appropriate due diligence. I would think that by the end of June, we may receive a award notification. Right? So the end of June, maybe the early part of July, depending on how COVID-19 is impacting the workload. And then from there, it'll just be a matter of satisfying special award conditions that would likely be placed within that contract. And then the timing on us, we need to start construction within 18 months of award notification. And we'd like to see, EDA would like to see that process completed within 3 years for deployment.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of going through those check boxes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion by council? Seeing none.
I think this is a great event that's gonna be taking place in District 2, so I'll just wait for the vote to give my final comments.
All right, with that being said, would you like to make a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
John, that's a thumbs up?
Sounded like an accident. Sounded like a garden, but it will take this.
Let us show that agenda item 10 is passed. We move on to agenda item 11, consideration of a motion to approve resolution 2020-14. A resolution requesting approval to apply for the staffing for adequate fire and emergency response grant for the city of Statesboro, Georgia. Mr. Penny could give us a little bit of insight.
Mayor, members of council, before I get into this, I do want to just stress, recognizing that as COVID has sort of locked down our economy, and for the public that's looking in, just like the items you just voted on, those funds, many of them are already in the bank. So we're not spending money that we're anticipating. We're spending money that we've had.
Okay.
So the next item has to do with it's a SAFER grant, and the SAFER grant would help us to be able to add firefighters. We have an outstanding fire department, a Class 2 ISO rated fire department. However, we do have need to add staff. And with this grant, the grant would provide $2.3 million. There is some match requirement, but the grant is over a 3-year period. We'd be able to add about 22 firefighters. And what is important about that? As I said, we have an outstanding fire department, but it would help us in our ability to deploy the adequate manpower that's needed when we arrive to a scene. When the engine company arrives to a scene, they don't have to wait for another engine company to get there to be able to start the attack. They would have the manpower on that truck in order to start an interior attack. That's the difference between burning something down or saving something. And our goal is, and the fire department's goal is to save property and to save life. And so this would allow us to be able to get people. As far as the budget is concerned, first off, we just applied for the funds. So we aren't necessarily budgeting the matching funds, but the other part of it is that if we were to receive the application, first off, you don't have to accept the grant. And that's the first thing. You don't have to accept the grant. But
we're not going to take that 2.3.
But if you accept the grant, you also have to recognize that this is for the long term. We would not just hire 22 people just for the life of the grant. We need to be planning for those people to be city employees from then on out. But then the other point that is important to stress is that these firefighters not only serve the city of Statesboro, but they also serve the fire district. So we would be using funding from the fire district as well to help offset that match, that cost. And then as we move forward, they'll be helping to pay for those additional firefighters as well. So, Mayor, members of the council, I do recommend that you authorize us to be able to submit the application. I believe sometime in early fall, we will find out whether we are the recipients of the funds, of the grant. But I do recommend it to you, and we need you to approve the resolution for that. The application is due on May 15th.
All right, thank you. All right, is there any discussion by council?
Another question I have is if we talked with the county about this, I mean, 22 is a lot of firefighters, and hopefully that could even expand. And then is there, just along those lines, is there any discussion to putting in a permanent third station? Like maybe out to, I saw your little adjustment there. You know, maybe something out towards the Lowe's, you know, with Broco growing in that area, growing out there, it's just a matter of time before we're gonna need a fire station out that way.
Yeah, we've had some preliminary conversations with the county manager. We do need to have some more conversations as far as agreement, but we have talked with about the need to add fire personnel. I did not tell them I was putting this on the agenda because on Friday afternoon I found out I need to get this added to the agenda, so I have not had conversation. But we've had some preliminary conversations about the need to add firefighters, and I did tell them that we were going to be applying for a SAFER grant, but that was 2 months ago, and then COVID hit, so we've had some conversation.
Any further discussion by council? All right, seeing that there is none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Let it show that agenda item 10 is passed. We move down to agenda item 11. Oh, I'm sorry. Agenda item 11 is passed. We have agenda item 12. Consideration of a motion to authorize execution of any documents to accept the proposal from Blakely Advisory Groups to conduct approximately 16-week-long housing needs study for the city of Statesboro. Mr. Penny, if you will, give us some insight on that.
Mayor, members of the council, this actually goes back to I think it was last fall. Councilmember Riggs asked about the possibility of putting a moratorium in place in reference to construction of any additional multifamily housing. And so we asked council for permission to be able to look at having a study done of our housing, in particular multifamily housing. And we got a proposal back in January. And again, we had a conversation, I think it was about a month ago. Mr. Riggs brought this matter up again. And so we brought the study idea back up for council's consideration. And as I've had some conversations with some of you and with staff and thinking about the study, first I want to make sure that it's clearly understand this study is not designed to address the GIT community, those housing needs. That's not at all what this is designed to do. But for Statesboro, multifamily housing is a significant part of our economy. And we have to be in a position that we understand our economy and what the impact of multifamily housing has on it. The Bleakley study will look at our existing conditions, but the Bleakley study will also compare our community to similar communities in Georgia, so we know where we stand. Looking at best practices, and so we need to have a better understanding of the demographics, but we also need to understand it's hard to step away from the multifamily housing because you have a big player in Georgia Southern, which has a big impact. But when we also think about multifamily housing in Statesboro, we have to look at it from another aspect, and that being multifamily housing for families that might be interested in moving to the area, because if you have multifamily housing, but you don't have family-friendly amenities, that creates another problem. And so I want to be clear, it's not about getting, but it's about understanding our housing economy, and recognizing we do need more single-family housing, but we're not ready to write off a significant portion of our economy, because we still have zoning with the possibility of adding an additional 3,065 multifamily units. But is it all student housing? And so this study will give us a better understanding of our current situation. It will make comparisons of our community to similar communities that might be competing with us. It will also help us in knowing where we need to position our community for people that might desire to live here that aren't just students that would come to the Statesboro, might not want a single family house, but would like multi-family housing, but they want the different amenities that we might not currently provide. Based upon that, I do recommend that we proceed with this study with the Bleakley Group, and it is at a cost of $38,500. We will ask them, is it possible to look at a housing assessment that would assess all of our housing, because as an important part of the GET program and looking for CDBG funds, one thing they do ask for comprehensive housing analysis. And what that talks about is how many structures you have, the condition of the housing. So we'll see if that's a possibility of adding that to this study. And if we can, that would help us in trying to apply for other grant funds. But the multifamily question is an important piece of Statesboro economy.
I have a question. So the $38,000 for this study that we're giving the Bleakley Group just to do a study, right? Where's that coming from?
It will come out of the general fund.
It's the general fund.
And when I say that, we have sufficient funds within this year's budget to be able to cover the $38,500. So I'm not going to ask for a special appropriation. We'll be able to cover it within this year's budget without an additional appropriation.
Well, I just have one concern. The concern is not necessarily with the study, because the study is necessary. My concern is the timing of the study. And why I say that is we're not out of the woods with this COVID-19. Small businesses are just coming alive. They're not even alive. They're still pretty much dead. And we want to spend $38,000 on a company to come in to do a study. I just feel like those funds could be used elsewhere to empower people in the city. And then we can put this on the back burner and it can be brought up at another time. That's just my concern. Because I haven't seen where we as a city, we've done anything to empower or help the small businesses here in Statesboro that are struggling, but we're willing to give a company $38,000 for a study. I'm just not with that right now. I'm not with that at this time. That's just my concern.
Any further discussion about that? Again, that's council's decision. Okay.
Yes, were you about to say something?
I do agree as well. I think that the study is needed. I just think with COVID-19, I just don't think that it's the right time right now.
I hate to go against Mr. Penny because I value your opinion. Yeah,
I'm used to it.
Not for me yet. But I share your concerns, and reading over what they propose, it's, like you say, largely a matter of timing, because this was proposed back in January, pre-COVID, and they're talking about making 5-year predictions of what our housing market is going to do. They don't have a crystal ball. I mean, nobody can do that right now. So I think it might be better, and particularly when you told me that in the process that we're gonna need to do this assessment, let's tell them we'll come back to them and ask them to do a proposal when we know specifically what we need for that, as well as some of what they're offering.
Now, I just want to be clear now, this is different from the, this is about a certain part of our economy. And what we wanted to do is see if we can add the comprehensive housing analysis. And I understand council's concern about timing. Timing is everything. Okay, it is everything. And if council decides you want to hold off, we're fine with that. The issue that comes up is right now we don't have any. The good thing is we don't have any apartments in the hopper. Okay, so the issue, and at the time when Councilmember Riggs brought it up, we didn't have any then as well. So we can wait. We can continue waiting. The only thing that we just have to recognize is if it takes 16 weeks, which is 4 months, we just keep pushing that 16 weeks down the road. But we're more than willing to do whatever council directs us to, with a smile.
Any further discussion by council?
Well, I think if we're going to do this, the GIDGE study, time the two together might not be a bad idea. But, and this is why I always wait till council to make my decisions, because you made a point there, Sherry, which was that, we don't even know if Georgia Southern's coming back in the fall. We know they're not coming back in the summer, but we don't know if they're coming back in the fall. That's going to have a significant impact on us long term. So, I mean, we do need to get this study on multifamily housing, but I think just where we're at with the up in the air, and it's not so much the COVID response, so it's so much that we don't know what the Board of Regents is going to do at this point. So, and that doesn't include OTC, that doesn't include East Georgia, that doesn't include everything else that's going on. Not to mention the fact that what happens if our industry slows down, and there are less people moving here for that reason. So there's a lot of factors. So I'm leaning with you guys that not that we don't need to do this, but we may just need to pull the trigger on this when the environment is a little bit more appropriate and we get an accurate measure of really what's going on. Because we got a lot of students right now. This is the week. I mean, you see it, traffic is up. Why is it up? Because all them kids in the apartment complexes are leaving. So anyway, good points from all three of you guys. Appreciate it.
I think Mr. Riggs went away.
Is he there?
No.
Oh, he went away.
I'm looking at you now. I don't see him.
I don't see him, but he was gonna say something earlier. He's on, he just doesn't have his camera on. There he is.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Yes,
I agree with Paulette and Bill. Yes, let's put this off for a little while until we can get out of the coronavirus.
Hey, Mr. Penning, would it be possible for them to do another estimate tying in what you were referencing? Okay.
And so, before we dive into a vote, I do want to say that I think the council is making a wise decision on this one. And COVID is very up in the air right now. It's really got a lot of things that's uncertain. This is a very uncertain time. And I don't know whether you guys seen it, but Gulfstream just laid off 699 people from the Chatham County. So that means that somebody here in Bullitt County no longer has a job. That means, and as it relates to Georgia Southern, we don't know what the fall is going to look like. Hopefully they'll be back in August. Hopefully they'll be back at the beginning of September. But we don't know. But what we do know is that there's a severe economic impact that our community is feeling right now. So I do want to co-sign on the part that Paulette said that we got to make sure that we do something for our local businesses. And so I think that's going to have to be a discussion that we continue to have. Is that what's the best way that we can help our businesses to survive within this time period? But at this time, I think that this is a wise vote, just to kind of put a pin in it for right now. so that we can kind of take a look and get a better assessment of what the economic terrain looks like in the future. Okay. With that being said, I'm going to jump out on a limb and ask their motion to disapprove the moving forward.
Don't do that.
Don't do
If
it.
you disapprove it, then we can't talk about it for another 6 months.
We
So
can't.
we can just take
Okay,
action.
so we can't even deny it.
Well, you can, but then you can't bring it up for
6 months.
yeah.
Okay,
Don't
well,
wanna do
that's
that.
absolutely fine. So council, I guess we're gonna have a no vote on this and then just sit here, and move on to the next item. With that being said, we'll move down to agenda item 13, which is consideration.
Could you just have everybody say nay?
No action was taken.
Yeah,
No,
no
no,
action.
it's not,
Oh,
we're not denying
yeah,
it. No
this is
action
no
was
action.
taken.
Mhm.
If we deny it, then it's like, no, we can't do that study. You can't talk to Blakely.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that.
Okay, gotcha, thank
It's not
you.
doing anything.
All right, so we'll move down to agenda item 13, if it pleases the council, which is consideration of motion to approve a memorandum of understanding and agreement with Georgia Southern University for development of Akins Boulevard.
Mayor and members of the council, this costs us no money.
Motion approved.
This is a memorandum, an agreement between City of Statesboro and Georgia Southern University. There's some LMIG funds, which are local maintenance improvement funds that would come through the Georgia Department of Transportation. And what that would do, it can only come to the City of Statesboro. However, and these funds will be used to extend Akins Boulevard, to connect with Tormentor Way. And however, we need an agreement with Georgia Southern, which you have before you. And what would also happen is they will provide the money that's required, the matching money that's required, and they will also manage the project. So we do recommend that you approve the attached agreement with Georgia Southern University.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion by council? All right, seeing that there is none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
See, we approved the free stuff quickly though. Absolutely, so we're moving on to agenda item 14, consideration of a motion to approve a development agreement with JGR Development LLC to reimburse the TAD special fund in the amount of $500,000 in 2018 SPLOST funds allocated to improvements along Old Register Road.
Now, this is gonna cost you some money. This is an agreement with JGR out at the development where all the work is going on with the improvement to Tormentor Way, but with Veteran Memorial Highway. There's an intersection that is pretty dangerous that needs to be signalized. And this $500,000 is going to help make that improvement. And so what we're asking is that you amend the agreement with JGR. The funding would come from T-SPLOST funds that we already have, that we recommend that you approve the agreement with JGR for this improvement.
Any discussion?
I'm sorry, this is to add a light?
Well, it would make the improvements,
The entire intersection.
Yes.
Oh.
Any discussion by council? Seeing that there's no discussion by council, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Aye. Thank you. Let us show that agenda item 14 is passed. We move down to agenda item 15, which is other business from city council. Is there any other business from city council?
The only thing I wanted to ask Mr. Penny is, have you guys been able to work up any estimates yet on what might be the sales tax implications of what we've gone through for the past couple of 3 months?
Not yet.
If you let me get to my report, maybe I might get close to that. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you. Any other business by?
Well, I just want to take every opportunity to thank the citizens of Statesboro who are doing the best they can to keep their distance and hold down the disease. My understanding is we flattened the curve. Our hospital did not get overrun. They were able to deal as people were ill. It's also my understanding that our governor has made it such that local cities cannot put in rules about social distancing and wearing masks. We have to abide by the city. I mean, by what the state has said, we can't do anything more restrictive than that. But I applaud the people among us who realize that it hasn't gone away. We flattened the first curve, but if we act like it's all over, there'll be another one just as big or bigger. So I encourage everyone to continue to wear their mask, use their gloves, keep their distances. We're not out of the woods with this. It's still out there. We don't have a vaccine. We don't have enough testing to know how many people among us are walking around infecting other people without knowing it. So continue to take it seriously. It's hard. We all want to go on vacation or go shopping, but it's really not smart to do it. So continue to be cautious and do the best we can to not have a big second wave hit Statesboro. I hear conflicting reports. Phil likes to reassure me that when he goes to Lowe's, there's lots of distance between everybody. At Walmart, they're using those 6 foot apart. I hear some who say they go sometimes and that's the case, and I have somebody else yesterday said I was at Lowe's when they opened the door and I couldn't keep people away from me, and I didn't see anybody with a mask except me. So I'm glad that our police and fire folks are still doing the COVID detail and trying to enforce. And it's my understanding that it's pretty well enforced when the uniform is there. But you be part of keeping it going whether the uniform is there or not. Everybody who can, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, seeing that there is none, we move down to city manager comments. Mr. Penny.
Mayor, members of the council, and going back to Councilman Boyd's question, it is budget time. and so we have been looking and working on the budget, and what I need to ask you to do is if you check your calendars, I'm going to send you an email. We'd like to propose some dates for meetings to review the budget, and I'm going to send you an email with 4 different dates, May 20th and 21st, and I'm going to use a schedule that I'm used to that seems to work well for me in the past. We would start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we would go to 6. And so we have 2 days, May 20th and the 21st, and then May 27th and the 28th. So we set up 4 different meetings. All these meetings are open to the public, and where we will work through the budget. You may not need all those meetings, but I have them set so that just in case you do need them, we have them set. We have to set the dates for the public hearing. So on May 19th, we will actually be setting the date for the public hearing. We have to put the notice in the paper on June 2nd. And then the public hearing notice in the paper on June 9th. And then the public hearing on June 9th. And then hopefully have the budget adopted by June 16th. We are seeing some implications of COVID, and some are significant, and especially some of the tax. In particular, and I sent a note to some of our partners, like the hotel motel tax is down significantly. Our projection for next year is not good. I will say, without going into a lot of detail about our budget, I think, and I'm going to give you a compliment, and the council and our staff has done an excellent job in positioning us so that we're able to survive through COVID. Now, how long the economic impact lasts, but having a substantial fund balance is really critical. And the good thing is that this year we use fund balance to balance our budget. But the best part is that we're not spending that fund balance, and that will help us next year. And even not spending the fund balance, we should have some other funds that will help us. But we are having to revise our revenue projections. But those are the kinds of things that we will go through, and that's why today we wanted to make it clear on some of the things that when we were spending significant amounts of money, those funds were already in the bank. So it's not like we're spending on future funds. And so, but if we can, and I will send you this email with those dates, and we'll send you calendar messages. But if any of those dates create a problem for you, let us know, and we'll make an adjustment.
Does the May 27th, 28th date give Cindy enough time to get done what she's gonna get done?
We all did it.
Okay.
We've been.
I mean, it's only a 362-page document.
Yeah. We actually, we've been meeting for the past 2-3 weeks on the budget. We thought we were almost done, and then we sat on a webinar last week and listened to the state and the projections, and the state talked about a 14% cut in budgets, and so that impacts us, and so in some cases we'll still be able to do road projects and things of that nature, but in other places, and Ms. Chambers, I'll say to you, a good call on the study because appearance is everything. and people will say you spend money, and so but we'll be ready, Councilman Boyd, on the budget. Okay, on the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. Pena. Any comments from council? Any discussion? All right. Seeing that there is none, we'll move down to agenda item 17 for public comments. Are there any public comments at this time? All right. Seeing that there's none, is there a need for us to go into executive session? No. All right. We'll move down to agenda item 19, John's favorite agenda item. Is there a motion for us to adjourn? All right. All those in favor?
All right.
All right. You take care, John.
Thank you, sir.